Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Welcome to NASCA session. As everyone comes in, would love for you to rename yourself if you haven't already. You could actually hover over your name. Several of you I can see have your state. So you can retype your name and then your state so that we know what state you are calling in from. We see people joining us today. And if you want to go ahead in the chat, you can tell us where you're calling in from. I see Virginia. I see, let's see, where are you from, Dawn and Crystal? Missouri. We have Missouri calling in. We have Virginia calling in. And we've got Barbara and Kelly. And we're going to have other people joining us. So thanks everyone for joining us today.
This is great. Jamie, people are joining us right now. More people coming in through the waiting room. Navigating the Zoom passwords, waiting rooms, moats and fences and gates and everything else. We keep people out of this hyper confidential session.
I know. Yeah. And so I see we have John from Nevada. So awesome to have you here, John, as everyone's kind of getting into these rooms. We're trying something different for the first time, having a room just for deputies and senior leaders and a room for our chief administrators. And those two links could be an interesting thing to challenge today. All right. Yeah, no problem, John. We have you though. Thanks so much for joining. All right. And this is right there is our programs committee. So we've been putting this on over a couple of months and had an awesome team. You may see someone from your state that was on that planning committee helping put this together.
Okay, Jamie.
All right.
Let's try that. Let's try that again.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm thinking we don't ring the bell and we just dive in here. But as we're talking about deputies, let me just say that we have been editing a video that you'll see later from the state of Missouri, where they do talk about the critical role of deputies. Mm-hmm. And Claire Morgan, one of our video edit guys, was overlaying some B-roll to make this stuff a little interesting. And I had to make a slight edit right at the last minute this morning because I realized he'd overlaid pictures of Missouri state deputies, as in with the police uniforms and the hats, and our media team have got a little confused over what deputies are. So if any of you are wearing a law enforcement badge, you're very welcome today as that type of deputy rather than a state deputy director. All right, Jamie, let's go.
Let's go. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. We've got a nice intimate group with us, which means we can have a lot of discussion with this group. So what we're going to do first is play something fun that we've been doing. Is we actually have a video teed up of some of our chief administrators, and it's called Did I Sign Up for This? And so before we get into our actual exercise today, where we're going to be talking with each other, let's hear from some of our chief administrators about this year, what's been going on with 2020, and did I actually sign up for this? So Scott and his team is getting that video all up and loaded. And while he's doing that, this is the fun of having it all ready to go. All right, there it is. We're gonna hit play.
The craziest thing that happened all year. Oh boy. Probably when I had a state senator literally with a microphone pretending to interview a broken escalator in the Capitol complex.
The craziest thing I've seen this year was our Department of Natural Resources has some deer that they taxidermy to help find and prosecute poachers in the off-deer season, and they end up kind of getting shot in the process and they get a little mangled looking, and so they end up in our surplus division. And my understanding is that those deer were seen by someone and perhaps will get used in a Christmas display this year. So that's up there with the craziest things I've seen this year.
The craziest things I've seen this year is that many employees, legislators, and even the governor's identity was used to falsely apply for unemployment.
What was the craziest thing you've seen this year? The craziest thing I have seen this year, some of you may recall that we had tornadoes that came through on March 3rd. And it was storms that rolled through, the tornadoes came through. You wake up the next morning and the sun is shining, it's beautiful, it's bright. But we know, of course, from the TV, everything that's going on, and you heard it, the storms when it was happening as well. But just to be out in the downtown area, because there was one part of our downtown that was hit really hard, and that little area is called Germantown. But to be in that area and see some of the people walking around and just holding on to 2 or 3 items of their possessions, it was like something out of a movie. It was like an Armageddon movie, because they were just walking around holding on to their things and weren't quite sure exactly what to do. It was really sad. What we didn't know at that time was 25 people in Middle Tennessee lost their lives, and we actually had $1.6 billion worth of property damage throughout Middle Tennessee. We also had state properties that were affected. We lost 2 buildings down on 2nd Avenue, one house DHS, the other one DCS. We lost the beginnings of what was going to be our artifact storage facility for our Tennessee State Museum. Thankfully, none of the artifacts were in there. And we also, unfortunately, received a lot of damage at the old Tennessee State Prison site. And that building had, I say that building, but it's a huge complex, and it had been done in the late 1800s. And it was the scene for a lot of movie shoots. So the castle remained intact, but a lot of the cell block area and the chapel and some of that around the complex were destroyed by the tornadoes. But that had to be the craziest thing I've seen this year.
And I'm sure all of you guys have your own stories. So this wasn't on our script, but anyone want to share any crazy things that happened to them this year before we go into our exercise today?
Jamie, I don't think anything this year has been on anybody's script. That could summarize the year.
I know. My thoughts are, I was looking at everyone's faces, that you guys have all had your own stories this year.
I'll share one, Jamie. We've all been in quarantine and spending a lot of time at home. And so one of the things that I think is probably helping everybody's mental state is getting out and getting some exercise. I was out jogging one day back in early June and just broke my leg. All of a sudden, just a stress fracture in my tibia. And spent the next several months recuperating, and I'm still in physical therapy. So yeah, just another fun part of 2020 for sure.
Thanks, Kelly, for sharing. And so before we get to the step back consulting, anyone else want to share something from this year? Did I sign up for this? What's your craziest story for the year?
Kelly, I'm going to hop on you breaking your leg. I didn't quite break my leg, but I sprained my ankle this morning. I was running from studio to studio. Here in Virginia, the schools are not closed yet, but there's been a cutback in some schools. So my 6-year-old is studying right next door. And I've noticed that all I do today is sprint from building to building. I sprint from house to car, from car to studio, back, whatever the school run is going. So as much as I say that we haven't been working out as much as we'd like to during this period, maybe I've actually racked up more miles than I thought I would, these unexpected pieces.
Well, be careful. I'm just saying.
You go easy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Scott, why don't you pull up our PowerPoint for today so we can get to our exercise, and we see more people joining us. So thank you everyone that has joined us. All right, we are going to our first session. So if you'll go to that next slide, here's what we're going to do today. So our agenda, so we're going to go over some introductions and what's a step back consulting. I know I see a lot of change leaders in this room, and it's exciting to see you. So you guys may have done exercise like this. We'll go back one. Awesome. And then Kelly is actually going to give us a real life problem of something that's going on in Michigan that we want to get your insight on. So what's a group brainstorming using this step back that you guys can give her thoughts on this. And this lovely slide keeps wanting to go back on me, Scott.
I think we've got it on auto rotate.
I know. You'll have to turn that off. And so she will present that problem, and then we will kind of brainstorm as a group. And then we'll give you guys time on what you guys need. And if you'll close the
I'm going to stop sharing. We're going to
Thank
fix
you.
this slide. You keep talking.
Yeah. And then we'll actually give you all time to present a problem and talk to your peers around the country on how they can help you solve that problem. So we'll do that, and that'll get us right till about 3 o'clock. And then at 3 o'clock, we have the Missouri team did this amazing in-depth thing about their performance training program. They're training what they've been doing in Missouri. So we'll hear from Missouri at 3 o'clock, give an award, and we will close. So once I'll kind of go through this exercise, and then we'll pull the PowerPoint up. But what this process is not what we would call a pushback consulting, where the person comes to you and says, here's all the solutions. But what Kelly's actually going to do is lay out what's going on in Michigan. Then she's going to stop. She's going to turn her videos off, and we're actually going to hear from you what she can be doing more in Michigan. And so for those, let's see how this perfect kind of change this fixed mindset. And the also thought is this is an exercise you guys can take back to your teams and use this type of process. So Scott, if it'll let you now, let's go to the next slide. So there's an awesome quote is that you can't solve the world's problem by using the same kind of thinking we've always used to create them. And this next one is also a great, as it's not we want, and this is the hard thing, is who has more time right now, but how do we provide time and space for a small group of you all, bright, committed professionals, to gather and regularly take turns discussing each other's problems and really sharing peer-to-peer on how we can, doing similar things, share best practices and thought leadership and solutions. So if we go to the next one, this is what I was kind of talking about, the difference between step back consulting, where Kelly's going to give you a problem and step back and let you guys give her solutions. And then the push back. I know you guys are awesome change leaders in your state, but where, oh, we've already tried that. You don't understand this wouldn't work in my state. You don't understand the culture. But we're going to if you go to the next one, actually learning through listening. So instead of the person who has the problem doing all the talking, and by doing that, we actually give away solutions, and we will get the group to think in the same way that we're thinking, instead of coming up with new solutions that we hadn't even thought about. And so this next one, awesome. Listening is learning. I know I hear this a lot from you guys as well, but the less that we talk, the greater chances that we can hear from the people on this call. All right, so this next one should be what we're getting ready to do. So here's what we're going to do. Right after this, I'm going to hand the floor over to Kelly, and she's going to present what's going on in Michigan. We're going to keep a rough timer on her, but for about 2 minutes. And then we're going to stop and have 3 minutes for you guys to ask questions of her about what is the case scenario in Michigan. And then I'm going to let Scott, what are we thinking breakout rooms? Do you think we should keep everyone in this room or do 2 different breakout rooms?
I'm going to judge that based upon the quality of the questions that we get. So if everybody's asking great questions, we may stay in the same room. If not, we're going to punish you with breakouts where you have to talk to each other. Is that a good incentive?
I love that one. I know you guys lead awesome trainings, and you guys know sometimes you just have to be flexible. And so based on how well the questions go, then we will actually have Kelly, if she stays in this one, turn her video off, and we'll talk through solutions. And then she'll share, oh, wow, I never would have thought of approaching Michigan's problem this way. So with that, I'm going to introduce Kelly. So we'll go to the next slide. Kelly is the director of the Office of Performance Management. We worked with their team a couple years ago on a case study on employee engagement and customer experience. And she's going to let us know how that's going and what she needs help from her peers around the country right now. So Kelly, what's going on in Michigan?
Thank you, Jamie. Yeah, so in Michigan, we have had a long-standing focus now on employee engagement. It's something we started measuring way back in 2012, and through, biannual employee surveys of all state of Michigan employees, and having that survey and has really helped us over the years build a very engaged team. We have used the results from the survey to develop action plans for improvement. It's helped us build a culture of lean process improvement where we're analyzing our processes and removing barriers so that employees can perform to their optimum level. We've worked on training our people leaders. We've had different experts come in to help train and better equip our people leaders to be great leaders of their people and to help them thrive and grow. We've worked on our communications, just a whole number of things we've been able to focus on and build our culture through this focus on engagement and through these consistent surveys. And we've really seen gains across the state in our engagement numbers, in the number of employees we would consider champions who are both highly engaged and anticipate staying with the state of Michigan for the next year. One of the things that our department and the Department of Technology, Management and Budget have also focused on over the past 5 years or so is that focused on customer service and customer satisfaction. So we were building this highly engaged workforce, but we needed to see how that was translating to service to our customers. So again, over the past 5 years or so, we've had multiple surveys where we've been able to measure our progress and really use the data to inform where we need to grow and make changes. And then COVID hits. And we are now, and I should back up a second. I think having a highly engaged team that is focused on customer service really helped our state of Michigan workforce transition to the remote environment. We had so many employees, purchasing PPE, purchasing laptops to enable remote work within other departments, working on our bandwidth issues, things of that nature. I think having that highly engaged workforce and that culture of service really helped us transition. But now we find ourselves about 8 or 9 months into this situation. I wouldn't say with no way out. We always want to be optimistic, but we know that, we'll probably continue to work remote, and the landscape long-term may change significantly. I would assume, all over the country, governments have shown their ability to work remote, that we can maintain service levels or, really have a productive workforce in this environment. So with all the, potential revenue decreases, the uncertainty, this new virtual environment, I think what we're really faced with now is how do we maintain and continue to make gains when it comes to employee engagement? I think some of the tried and true methods that we've used and relied on over the last 8 years or so, all of a sudden feel very different. And how does our service delivery model as a central service provider to all state agencies change? So that's where I'm asking for your help today. What are you doing to increase and maintain engagement, levels of service? What are some of those strategies that you would recommend to employ going forward as we continue in this remote and uncertain environment, and perhaps even for the longer term? And how do we maybe use this opportunity to shift our culture in new and positive ways versus just, responding to a crisis? I think would love to hear your feedback on that.
So before we get into solutions, what we're going to do is give about 3 minutes for you to further ask Kelly questions. And then we're going to ask her to turn her video off and actually provide those solutions. But what you're really asking for is how do you just maintain, is that the employee engagement and customer service right now, as well as the culture?
Absolutely. Yep. Where we've been together for years and years and years, and now we're all of a sudden not. How do we keep that momentum and keep that service?
Kelly, can I ask a quick follow-up question? Maybe we jumpstart the group here, but why does this matter? We're in a crisis or a pandemic. Why wouldn't the skeptic in me say, well, we'll just, we won't worry about this soft, fluffy thing like engagement until we get through this?
Sure. I think if there's one thing a pandemic shows us is that it's all about the people, right? And taking care of one another and making sure we're all that our well-being matters personally and also professionally. And I think, we're still trying to move the state forward. We're still trying to, make sure that our work is done so that our customer agencies can deliver their services to the residents of Michigan in whatever that may be during the pandemic. So it is important that we are all still giving 110% and trying to move this forward.
Okay. All right.
So those on the call, what questions do you have for Kelly? And if you write those in the chat too, we will. Oh, there we go. I always like to give a good facilitator pauses and gives everyone time to think about some questions, and feel free to drop those in the chat.
So Kelly, while we're waiting on any questions, I'm observing the challenge that we face, which I think Nelson's on a call, he's now putting a face mask on. And it sort of illustrates just the enormous pressures that everybody is under during this time. And that's before you add family pressures or economic pressures to it, because we also don't know what people are facing on that front. This is kind of remarkable.
Absolutely. If there's one thing we need to give each other right now, I think it's grace that, we all don't know the situation of our fellow coworkers. And number one, we've just got to help each other through this.
Yeah.
So Jamie, we have a question from Barbara that's coming through chat, which is, can we get an example of what has worked for you in non-remote environments in the past and what has worked well already? And then that's from Barbara in California. And then from Dawn, grace and patience are our mantra for everything.
Absolutely. And maybe we'll start bringing that into normal times if and when we get back to our new normal.
So Dawn, this is for you. As we were setting up today, we're running two separate meetings and we've had some technology failures on this end. And one of my colleagues said, what can I do for you? I said, grab me a gin and tonic. And my mic was open and there was these voices from Kentucky that said, get me one too. So I think that illustrates where at least the NASCA team are right now. But Kelly, what examples have you seen? I think this is people hunting for the answers to this exercise, but do you want to give one or two illustrations of the types of things you're looking for?
Sure. So do we want to, is the question maybe what has worked well in the past?
Yeah.
Okay. In a non-remote environment.
Yep. Sure. So one big component to engagement, I would say, is recognition. So we had a very robust recognition program, I would say both statewide as well as within our department. We have had what we call good government coins that are based on our values of leadership, excellence, teamwork, and customer service. And we would always have these actual coins that we would award and present in person, make a very meaningful presentation and award that physical token to our employees. We also did things within our department, such as service award breakfast receptions. So for those employees who were high tenured, hitting that 25, 30, 35, 40 and above years of service, we would always do an in-person reception with the senior leadership team and the director and, just take some minutes hearing from them and about their service and what advice they would have and just some interesting stories. Really that in-person connection was very strong. And similar, maybe related to service awards for those hitting, 5, 10, 15, and 20-year marks. We printed physical certificates and would always make very public, award presentations with these. And so now with everyone working remote, we don't have that in-person connection, that same presentation style. We can talk about, congratulations on 5 years, but their certificate in the frame with taking a picture with a coworker right next to you that you've worked with, it's just very different. And so how do we adjust some of those practices to this new environment? Or do we need to come up with new ones?
So Kelly, I think you've just illustrated how great that question was. And as reluctant as I am to give praise to Jamie's methodology here, I think we have to, because every element of that sort of tribal ritual and symbols involved in person, the handing of the coins and the photograph together and the framed item, this is all very physical and in person, and that connection, all of which have disappeared. It's interesting, that was the anchor. And then Jamie, we've got a comment from John. Do you want to address that?
Yeah. And John, I think your microphone's not working, right? You don't want to ask that one. But it says, with staff working remotely, how are you managing employee scheduling and assignments while maintaining their morale and giving employees a voice?
So Jamie, is this for me or is this for the group to kind of brainstorm I think this is part of my question too.
This is part of your question to the group.
Yep.
How do you increase everyone's morale? So we'll circle back to that one, because I think that's something, it illustrates that's something everyone is struggling with right now. And we'll talk through some solutions there. And
then Debbie from Virginia has come in with a clarifying question for you, Kelly. Is in Michigan, do you intend working remotely for the long term? I'm not sure if Governor Whitmer has made an announcement about that yet, but what's the status of remote working in Michigan?
Sure. So we know as a state workforce, we're at least working from home for those that can work from home until the beginning of January. You know, with the way COVID is going in Michigan, I don't think anyone would be surprised if that perhaps gets extended. But I do think one of the things that we have heard from our employees and many of our managers as well is, can we do this for the long term? So currently we have a statewide work group going to kind of look at that and the pluses and, you know, some of the barriers we may need to overcome to make that more of an option for our state workforce on the continuing basis post-COVID. So I would envision that, yes, some component of remote work will be staying with us. Now, whether that's full-time, a couple days a week, or, you know, just won't work for some areas, that could be very possible too.
So the other one, someone else echoing, they're thinking about what to do with their service recognition this year. So everyone's going to be listening to the solutions. All right, and we'll get here to Crystal's, because I think that's also on some of the solutions. So any clarifying questions before we get into solving this problem around employee empowerment, customer service, customer satisfaction? All right, if there's no more questions, Scott, I think we'll just stay in this room and kind of talk through solutions. How does that sound?
I think we will. And I'm seeing we're already moving to solution mode in chat, so we should dive in here. Kelly, if you don't mind switching off your video so you're not intimidating anybody, and we're going to trust that you're not listening. We'll just put it on low and come join us in a little while. And then Jamie, as we go into this session, I think the only thing that we want to encourage people to do, because we've all been in crisis and tactical mode, is, of course, the way to great ideas is to start with the really stupid ideas, and there are such things as stupid ideas, but they're welcome. Okay, so we start with what would we're allowed to break the protocols of state government to start with. Is that fair?
Yeah, that kind of concept of we've already tried that, we can't do that. This really, and that's why we asked Kelly to turn off her video so she can't say that wouldn't work in Michigan. I'm going to step back and now listen to you guys. I already saw Crystal giving a great example, and so I don't know, Crystal, if you're able to unmute yourself and tell us a solution idea you had. And if not, I'll read it and I'll kind of listen to if anyone else wants to talk through some of their solutions. Let's see. I see Michael in California.
Yeah, it's kind of answering Crystal's question for her, but you know, we still meet as a senior leadership team. We still meet weekly. Just to check in, see how everybody else is doing across the office. We have about 65 people within our office, within the larger Department of General Services. But we've been still trying to maintain team building activities, because back to Scott's original question to her on why continue engagement, we found, and what we're seeing is with remote working, people know they can do it for long term. And in our office, we have about a dozen people who've probably been in the office for 20 plus years. They're long-term people, and we like to see that. But with people working remotely, one of the concerns is there's less connection to the office. If you're not having those potlucks and those awards ceremonies together, what connects them to your office to prevent them from leaving? You know, and then you're constantly retraining employees, and you're going to see turnover in the long term. So it'll be interesting to see what that happens in the long term. So we've been trying to maintain team building throughout. We've tried a few team building activities throughout. We've gone back to, with pandemic not being able to touch, we've even done goodie bags and things we've sent home as senior leadership to our staff. Whether they appreciate it, you know, it's hard to tell yet. You know, only half of them get picked up, people swinging by the office to grab them. But the last one didn't go over quite well as we had hoped. So we're revisiting that idea and how we approach that in the future, but we're still trying to maintain those team building activities to engage people.
So why did it not go over as well?
Well, you know, holidays are always tough, you know, and the possible religious connections and, you know, remaining that separation that is, you know, we call it a harvest festival, but it's still, the last was tied to a little bit over Halloween. So there's still a little bit of a tie there. But you run risks when that happens. If they're not controlled, and it went okay, but they can be better, and there's always that risk with civil service and complaints and stuff when you try that. But you know, our goal is still to keep people engaged for that long term, because we can't do those in-person meetings and the award ceremonies, and they're just not quite the same, like she mentioned, you know, showing the plaques, handing out the awards, you know, the applause from the audience versus a Zoom clap kind of thing. You know, it's not the same thing.
Yeah, you don't like the jazz hands,
right?
But yeah, the goodie bag from senior leadership is a new idea. So thanks for sharing that one. And then tell me more about this team building. What exercise did you do?
We've been playing around with a few ideas. We've tried Kahoot games. In Kahoot is an online portal. You know, these all have a little bit cost from a monthly standpoint, so we try to use free accounts when we can. But Kahoot lets you do online competitions. It's live scoring. You can pose trivia or quizzes. We've done more. We've done both. We've done work-related trivia. We've done non-work-related trivia. But it's live scoring. Makes it a little entertaining and fun. We've tried Mentimeter for just voting and polling to keep people engaged. You know, we have all staff meetings once a month. And when you're looking at a screen of 60 people and 50 of them are dark, you know, it's hard to keep people engaged. So there's thoughts that maybe those kind of activities get people engaged in the meeting at least, so you know they're at least participating even if you can't see them. You know, we hear that even from my son who's distance learning. It's hard for a teacher if they only see a couple people on screen, which is why more and more schools make it mandatory, but it becomes a distraction to everybody else sometimes as well. But it's hard to even be engaged as a leader to talk to your staff if you're not sure if they're listening.
Some great insight. And I know my insight kind of changed. I'm going to come to Crystal next. So changed on this a little bit because over the last couple of weeks, I've been taking care of my husband in the ICU. And so being able to turn my camera off and still participate, you can actually get a lot out of it. So it is hard sometimes, even though you can't see a face, to realize people are taking it in, even if they're not there because they've got 27 other things going on. So that changed a little bit of how I think of it.
That's true. Amy, as you line up the next speaker, I wanted to just throw in sort of what we've seen in the corporate sector, which is when you're talking about the gifts and the gift delivery, Michael, is of course there are limits to what the state can do. So we're seeing like the tech companies just drown their employees in gifts and rewards and things that might feel good. Of course, I'm just adding on to the challenge here as we all have to be creative and keep it very, very tight on the budget and ethics side, which just adds a complication. Jamie, we've got some commentary waiting to go, yeah?
Yeah, so I think we're going to go to Crystal next in Missouri. So Crystal, what are some of your ideas? How are you guys doing this in Missouri?
Yeah, thank you very much for circling back to me. Sorry about the double mute. So in Missouri, what we have done is we took our traditional award ceremonies that happen on a monthly basis in person, and we moved those to be a monthly video celebration instead. that video reaches more people, because instead of having an in-person meeting when maybe only 40 or 50 people could attend in person, now it goes out to the entire workforce, and the peers are able to get on video and talk about their coworkers and what they really think about their teammates. And really the celebration has broadened, and we've gotten a lot of great feedback there. So the other positive feedback we reached on that was people don't necessarily like to stand up in front of a crowd and be recognized for their service, but they really do appreciate this tangible video they can hang on to for a long time. So it's gone over really well in this virtual world.
Yeah, and I wonder, maybe Crystal, if you've seen this at all, because if you used to get your recognition award at work with your employers, now you're also being able to celebrate with your family, your friends, and share that video. I'm so proud to work for the state of Missouri. Look at this video. Have you guys seen any of that?
Yes, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, we talked about doing that. We're getting ready to acknowledge our green belts in OA, and what we're doing is we're sending them their certificate, the letter from the commissioner, their actual physical green belt to their home address. So that's going to be another opportunity for them to celebrate with their family as well as their teammates.
Awesome, I think, and we got lots of other great solutions coming in. So Dawn, also from Missouri, did you have a couple ideas?
Yes, and in true, mobile fashion here, I'll share my video, even though, and that's one thing, honestly, we laid that groundwork in the beginning because these screens would all be dark. And particularly for the ladies, we said, you know what, hair and makeup not required, hop on, be who you are. And it was funny because Crystal actually is a teammate of mine. And early on in video days, I show up like this, and her and like several other ladies, and I appreciate it, they're messaging me going, do you know your video's on? Do you know your video's on? And I'm like, yes, how terrible must I look? But anyway, I appreciate that. But that's one thing we said, like casual space, like this is how we are now. Don't feel bad about joining from your couch. Don't feel bad about the cat crawling across the screen. Don't feel bad about the kid that walks in and interrupts you because they needed something. Like from a leadership perspective, we set that kind of tone and expectation pretty straight out of the gate when we went online in March. The other thing that we did, and it's probably scattered in some of these other ideas, we got super intentional about communication. Like we used to do once a month team meetings. Now we meet every single week. Individual team meetings, I went from once a month to every day. And those are some things we did in the beginning as we worked through challenges with technology and connections and things like that. But quite honestly, we've all looked back and said, yeah, we should have been doing that all along. So like, and they're huddles, like 15-minute huddles, 20-minute huddles. They're not intended to be like this super huge thing. You don't have to have agendas and PowerPoints, but it's just having that level of accessibility to one another that we will continue forever. I mean, I really think that that will be our rhythm going forward. And the other thing that we've looked at, when we do these individual team meetings, I know they sound kind of hokey, and I know some of you probably kind of think that too, but then they kind of take off. And we've done fun things. There's 45 people in our group, and we've done some fun things around, like we rotate around, and we'll pick 2 or 3 people each time, but things like 2 truths and a lie. Or, spend 5 minutes in introducing yourself. And to Crystal's point, people might not want to get up in front of crowds, but they'll do it on a Zoom or a WebEx. And people then sharing pictures of their family and their pets and their last vacation that they might have talked about at work, but they wouldn't have been so formal as to put it in a PowerPoint. But we do that now when we're really kind of having some fun with it. And again, in the beginning, it took a bit to take off. But just really being super intentional about, we've got one of our teams that hosts what they call a happy half hour. So they all get online together for a half hour right at the end of a work day and just celebrate one another in that space. And that's worked for their team. So it's just really being very intentional on the communication and connection, encouraging the videos. Truly just really encouraging people to use webcams and get comfortable with that so that you do still have that person connection going on.
Amy, before we go on to the next, I
Yeah.
just wanted to capture some of these ideas. So set expectations low, be yourself, be very intentional about communications, learnings that maybe we should have been doing more communication in meetings in person. And then there was a point you made about introverts, which I think is worth pulling out of here just a little bit. We had an in-person meeting yesterday. It was outdoors, but there were 3 women and a man came over to meet with us. And the white man did what we white men do, which is over talk. And it just reminded me, it's much harder for people to do that on Zoom calls. That you're very aware of who's getting voice and who's not getting voice, and it helps you sort of balance that out, that there's a leveler. Your idea about the introverts, sharing something they're interested in, whether they do it in chat or they do it visually, may not have actually happened in the in-person meeting. I just thought that was interesting to capture as a positive potentially coming out of there.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, Jamie, back to you. That was probably the white man over talking. Yeah.
No, and some excellent ideas from Missouri, and also kind of to introverts. If you force someone to make a PowerPoint about themselves, that's not something you would bring your slide deck to an in-person networking event, but it's a way for introverts to communicate and talk. So Debbie, I didn't know if you were unmuted. You had some awesome comments about scavenger hunts, things that you guys are doing in Virginia around this.
Yeah, so we really have, I guess, embraced the use of Microsoft Teams for any number of things. So we have what we call a First Friday social hour, which is generally, Friday afternoons from 4 to 5, and it's open to all staff, and it is not business related at all. It's just kind of a chit chat, say hello to your colleagues, what's going on, what are you having fun doing, things like that, just to encourage that informal social interaction, water cooler chat that we're all missing. We have done things like, a virtual scavenger hunt where we posted like a list of things, it might be like, a picture of yourself doing some kind of exercise. We had like a picture of you with toilet paper, was one of the first ones that we had when toilet paper was hard to find, and had people post pictures of, what they found, on the scavenger hunt. And we had prizes for like who, got the most, who posted the most pictures of things from the scavenger hunt. We've done, bingo. We've had Halloween costume contests. We've done, we usually have like what we call our top awards, which is a rewards recognition program. And we usually announce them at our quarterly all hands meeting. And in the past, we've kind of kept them secret and just announced it at the meeting. But have invited everybody, the winners up to the front of the room so they're acknowledged and get a picture taken. Well, what we've done now is started kind of, secretly sending them an announcement saying that they've won. Mm-hmm. And we have a special cubicle name banner that we print for the winners. So we've been sending them that and asking them to take a picture of themselves in their home office, displaying their banner, and send it in, and we put that in the PowerPoint presentation at the all hands meetings. Just we encourage people to post pictures of their pets, just a variety of different things. So just a lot of ways of using Teams to keep that engagement up.
Jamie, I've got to say that it's a sign of the times and how much we want human connection, Debbie, that the cubicle name banner. No, I think it's brilliant. And there's a lot of psychology around this of symbols and totems. So that's a totem. It's a physical thing that we carry around that represents team. And by shipping it to people and then photographing it, you take it from a totem to a symbol. I love it. And it's back down to that. It's not complicated, but it's a communication that we care, that we care about people. I love it. Jamie, there was a comment from John that you're going to read out.
Yeah. So I'm going to read this out, and then if there's any last person. So then what we're going to do after that is we're going to ask Kelly to come back on. And after we do this and see if there's any last comments, to kind of see what was your perspective? What did you get from these comments, from what's your learnings here? So John said, We've switched from team group emails and texting and video meetings so staff can at least communicate together in a group setting on a regular basis, and it avoids having individuals respond to a question, particularly when it is procedural or scheduling changes or questions. We've switched to team/group emails. Hopefully I read that right from John. So any last comments? Sometimes these small group discussions are my favorite because we get to hear so much from around the country. All right, Kelly. So we'll have you turn your camera back on and unmute yourself and tell us what would apply in Michigan, what would work in Michigan, which one of these, what you learned today.
I'm really intrigued by the video presentation idea. And I would love to hear more about that too. I guess I'm curious, was it just coworkers maybe videoing themselves with a smartphone, or how was that done? Could we take a minute to dive into that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Crystal.
Yeah. I'm happy to answer that question, Kelly. What we did was we had people use their smartphones and take a video. Our video team says, do it horizontally. It makes a better picture. And that was basically the only instructions we sent out, a short between 10 and 30-second clip of peers congratulating their teammates. It was really awesome. And our video team quickly put together a video, put a little music with it. And then we would put the description of their award in the video as well.
So
Awesome.
Crystal, we've got a little evidence point from NASCA that this stuff's important. So a few weeks ago, Jamie and Pam called us and said, hey, we're going to do these innovation awards, and we want a couple of you guys to dress up in sort of dinnerware and pretend it's the Oscars. And as my grumpy Brit self was like, Jamie, that's a ridiculous idea. Nobody's going to be interested in it. It's going to look silly and stupid. We've done 2 so far. And in both cases, employees who wouldn't typically be in part of the meeting have dialed into the meeting to watch it, and then requests for the video afterwards, which I think plays to what you were saying earlier, is that people do want to show their families, and it's a totem for what they're doing in the workplace. So yeah, I think predicting what people will relate to is sometimes tough, and you just keep experimenting. I love that. Kelly, other feedback that you might have on that?
Yeah, I think we've tried some similar things to what was mentioned around, leveraging Microsoft Teams to the extent possible. One of the things that we tried to do extremely early on is leverage training materials about Microsoft Teams as well, so that people felt comfortable to use it. We were kind of in the process of switching from Skype to Teams. So a lot of the initial communication was about training with the software itself, and different enhancements have been rolled out to that, I would say, through this time that we've been home. But leveraging team chats for, sharing stories and pictures and recipes and different sort of contests, or your new coworker, whether it's the plant or the dog, or, a child at home doing class. So those were all very fun things. And I do, one of the things that, Scott, I think you said too, is sometimes it almost does feel like Teams can be, or these virtual platforms can leverage the playing field. Mm-hmm. I've heard it said between introverts and extroverts, or, who's kind of, maybe monopolizing a conversation, or that, you can very intentionally go down the participant list, or, kind of give everyone equal time and equal opportunity to make those sort of connections. So that was interesting to hear as well. Haven't done the goodie bag idea. Little curious about that as well. I know we're trying to, avoid going in person or having any employees going actually physically into the office. But, that idea too of mailing some things out to employees that were once handed out in person could be a very helpful idea. Let's see, what else did I grab? Communication being key. I think maybe that was that Dawn that kind of spoke to that. That is very true. I think we've had some conversations too with some of our industry vendor partners, and that's what they're really seeing as some of the key to engagement as well in the remote environment is having that frontline manager or that mid-level manager that's closer to the employees. I know some of us are, a little bit, I would, maybe higher up in the org chart, or we get to do these awesome events where we learn the best practices, the tips and tricks, but how do we get that down to our managers so that they're buying into this as well? Because we know that that frontline team interacts the most with their first line managers, and how do we make sure that their managers are, embracing these new opportunities and ways of doing things and making themselves available, whether it's, I heard a lot of increased meeting times or increased touch points, whether it's just 15 or 20 minutes, kind of the virtual open door policy that, a lot of us might have had in person, and making that a, standard practice in this remote environment too, I think could be really powerful in keeping up that connection with our employees.
So
Kelly,
go ahead, Scott.
No, I was just going to say, as a foreigner, I'm intrigued by Americans' discomfort with silence. And I had a question for all of you around these social hours. I love living in America. I choose to live here. There's just a couple of things I miss from Great Britain. One of them is, unsurprisingly, are pubs, but not for the beer. One of the traditions we have in a British pub is that you go there by yourself, or you go with a friend, but you don't actually have to talk. You just sit and have a pint. And I've often wondered about this obligation to speak on these calls. And Jamie, we experience it on breakout groups, right? Where people want to engage or not engage. What does it feel like if we just all dialed in and were relatively quiet? And if something was spoken, or somebody shared something. But I don't have any answers for this, but if people have ideas of just how you lift that pressure to almost perform on camera. I just sort of throw that out there. How do we create a digital vehicle to just be around each other as we would be in the workplace? That's Americans proving to me they can be silent.
Right. I've seen this done with, it's called Choose Your Own Adventure. And one of the rooms, they just played music, and they all sat in there with the music played in a breakout room. So the lack of structure would drive my introverted self crazy.
I wonder if, I don't know whether this is allowed under sort of individual state rules, but you can almost imagine a cigar lounge where people are just smoking cigars and listening to jazz. Or like, it's an interesting idea. How do we be around each other without, necessarily feeling the obligation to talk, which of course we do that a lot in the workplace, the physical workplace.
So we have only about 8 minutes left. And what we're going to do now is a speed round of this step back and consult. And so I need someone that wants to use this group power. We got so much out in just that quick time to pose a problem to the group. And then we'll do 2 minutes of questions and then 4 or 5 minutes of just other solutions. So Kelly did an awesome job of showcasing what she needed in Michigan. But is there anyone on this call that wants to throw out a problem to the group? We'll ask a few questions, and then we'll talk about it and throw out some solutions and get new ideas for something. I know someone. If not, we always have our amazing Missouri team. So we have, let's see. Anyone have a problem they want to throw out to the group?
Jamie, I have one if you don't have a volunteer. I'm not sure it's a good one, but I have one.
Let me see. Anyone want to throw out a problem to the... All right. If not, Scott, what problem do you need this group of thought leaders to help you with?
Okay, so this has been brought home to me because we've been on the road visiting different members of NASCA, and we've been in red states and blue states. And it's been sort of staggering to see the commonality between the states and the challenges that they face and how you're all addressing it. But something that's come up privately within the NASCA community, and we're seeing it with corporate friends as well, is not just the pandemic, but in these politically divided times, how do we build bridges in the workplace? So it's jumping off Kelly's comments, which is how do we find commonality at a time when there's so much that is designed to divide us? And so just in that same realm, I was wondering if there are ideas out here of how we, without taking politics head on, can sort of bring people back together during this period of time when we all need to be rallying. So I just wondered what people were doing in their individual domains and states, or even within their churches, synagogues, mosques, or community groups, or anything else, just as human beings, where people are seeing that bridges are being successfully built. And if there's silence on this, it's going to make me really sad.
I'll jump in if that's okay.
Please.
One of the things that our governor has done in Michigan is she's having all state employees complete implicit bias training. We have a big focus right now in the state and within our department on diversity and inclusion. So it's being open to all ideas and perspectives and cultures and backgrounds and what everyone can bring to the table. So I think that's been one way to, start opening up some of that thought of inclusion and building that positive recognition of what we all bring to the workplace, no matter what our background or color or religion or political preferences are.
I think that's great. A social worker, I asked this question of just a couple of days ago, and she said, one of the challenges with the remoteness is there's less opportunity to talk about our other interests, whether it's the sports that we play or the hobbies that we have. And it was interesting to me, like, how do you replicate that? And maybe it is some of the show and tell ideas that we had earlier. You talk about some other interest that you have, that you give people different avenues to bond that isn't sort of this algorithmic social media way of bonding. Okay. To the kind of Californians in the group, you all have been dealing with not just the pandemic, but also forest fires in the midst. You've had the biggest. How are you holding everybody together, just in terms of sheer workload as well? I mean, I'm going to go back a little bit to the engagement point, Kelly, here is, how are we balancing sort of the forced family fun element of this, where almost the connection is more of a burden than an asset? What are you doing just in terms of the workload over there on the West Coast?
Well, let's see. I think, so Michael and I are both from the same office, and we have a role with school districts throughout the state. So we're dealing primarily with school districts who have been impacted for sure by COVID, and then also, unfortunately, a number of them have been impacted by the fires. So we're not first responders in our office. We're not directly assisting on that, but we have had some staff that have been pulled into helping with contact tracing or helping with being extra resources to some of the fires as well. So I think one of the things that we're doing is we're constantly balancing the workload, because it is the greater need. And we're communicating to our staff that, okay, yes, we realize that this is something totally different than what you were doing before, but we've been fortunate in that our folks have recognized the true impact that they're making when they move into those tasks. And then we're prioritizing. So if we have workload that can wait on processing these funding applications from school districts, we prioritize it and make sure that things we absolutely have to do get done. But then we have the nice to haves that might need to sit for a little while. I'll give you a quick example of this, because it was potentially going to be one of the problems that I brought up here, but it's pretty complex. But we're shifting to that digital platform, and we've got our folks that have adapted very nicely to this remote workforce, but we still have a lot of paper-driven processes. So we have a couple steps in there that folks desperately want to go all the way digital, which is great, but we have a few barriers in place that are going to prevent us from doing that for the next few months. So we're communicating to them that, okay, yes, we want to do this. It's absolutely something that we need to tackle, but it's going to need to wait because we have these other tasks. And then we're just communicating like, okay, here's the other 5 higher priority assignments that we're having to take care of right now. So it's been an interesting mix on the workload, because we have found a way to pivot and take care of what we need to do. We've put in some some assistance to school districts, basically some rules, basically that if they're impacted by all these other things, they can tell us, stop, I need to wait on my project with you because I got to figure out how to get the kids back into the classroom, or, the school burned down, so your paperwork is not my biggest issue. So we've taken some steps to recognize that kind of ahead of districts needing to interact with us and ask for that. We were proactive on that step. So I guess we've just been kind of trying to assist in the limited capacity that we have in not being first responders, but making it easier on the people that do have to be on the front lines of these things at our school district level, and trying to keep our staffs, like Michael was saying earlier, just the team building, the communication. We've been, as our senior leadership team, we've been dropping into our smaller group meetings, whether it's a team or whether it's a division in the office. So we want to be present for them. And even if we don't have anything to say, we're there and we can say, hi, how are you guys doing? So we've been trying to be there and just hear them and hear our staff and what their concerns are. And let them know, yeah, this isn't going to be forever. So you're down a teammate for 6 months because they're contact tracing. We recognize that. We're going to adjust your workload, and we don't expect you to cover that full gap. We'll figure it out. But just, I think communication has really been the biggest piece of it, because that's all we can really do is tell them why we're doing this, and tell them that we recognize all that they're facing and try to help them. If it's a couple of pieces of chocolate in a goodie bag, or an ice cream social where they get an ice cream bar out of the freezer when they come pick up their project file. There's not a lot that we can do, but at least they're seeing that we're trying, and hopefully that is helping them in that, in this instance where the workload is a lot different than it was a year ago.
Kelly, I think that Barbara's just sort of thrown a really hard idea into the engagement thing, which is lifting people's workload so they have time for the engagement. I think that's kind of brilliant. We're expecting people to be engaged when they have all of this stuff on their plate. And then how do we actively lift their workload? I loved what you said, Barbara, about you get to say, whoa, hang on. You can't give me that project right now. It's almost like the soccer red card that you get to give to headquarters or the boss. I think that's wonderful. Yeah. I'm under no pressure here at all. It's not like I'm homeschooling at the office or any of those things. Say hi, Dawn.
Hey. Well, and this is what my favorite part about NASCA is these peer-to-peer conversations where you guys can really lean on people around the country and tell your story of what's going on in California, and be able to pick up the phone with someone in Michigan and say, how would I solve this problem? Or be able to hear from Maryland or Missouri, and now you have a different way, a proven way of doing something in your state. So before we go on to the next thing, I am going to drop in our LinkedIn group. So make sure you can go on and post on that LinkedIn group and continue these conversations. I'm going to post it right now in the chat.
And Jamie, while you're doing that, I think it would be great given that we're in this mode of sort of engagement of this group and what's burden and what's not, is if people want to drop you a note to say, is this really helpful for you all to talk to each other or not? Do you feel obliged to be part of this, or is it helpful? What do you want to talk about? Because with Kelly's permission, we really did take an unstructured view of this, and we agreed we'd let the conversation go where it went. I found it fascinating and helpful, but I think it'd be great to let you know if it was or not.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so you can contact me either by the chat or the email. What would you need most from your peers around the country? What kind of conversations? Hearing from Missouri and who all did, Virginia, all of your ideas was really helpful to me, but was it helpful to you all? Was it helpful trying to solve the problem? So any final bow, Scott, before we go to our micro review from Missouri?
Well, you handed me the bow. Oh.
I know. I can make the bow unless you have a final bow. I do want to thank Kelly. Awesome job. Thank you so much for doing this exercise with us and letting the group kind of say, you put it out there. Here's my problem. I have amazing peers around the country. How can you help me with this problem? Let's not duplicate what's working around the country. So, Scott, now
So I think on that note, so just so you're aware, the production values of NASCA's broadcast today have reduced considerably as, given the state of COVID-19, we reduced the studio staff here down to a skeleton crew of 3 with 1 child homeschooling, and then we divided the NASCA call in 2 today. So there's approximately 1.5 people producing these calls. So thank you for bearing with us as we roll through this. We are now going to move to a state micro review, and it's been wonderful that we've had ideas from the great state of Missouri, because we got to spend a day in Jefferson City last week showcasing some of the work that they've been doing around professional development. And many of the themes that came up here around communication and employee development also came up during that session. And so we had originally intended these to be short videos that sort of summarize some of the work that different states have been done. But frankly, the material's been so great that what we're going to show next is a 13-minute highlight video. And then in a couple of weeks, we'll post to the NASCA website, so the in-depth interviews that we did with the team. And so if you give me a moment to wrestle with microphones over here, I'm going to play this video. And then we'll be coming on to some awards. Okay. Jamie, if you want to fill, you feel free to go ahead and fill while I switch over.
Yeah. And Kelly, I did want to give you a moment. Thank you so much. Any last bow you want to tell the group?
No, I would just say thank you for all the wonderful ideas. I love when we get a chance to talk about people and those connections. I think it all comes down to that. So I appreciate the time and all the ideas.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. That's my favorite thing, is learning from everyone as well. So that video was coming up, and thanks. If you ever want to use NASCA to help facilitate those conversations, feel free to reach out to me and we can help you connect with other states. So with that, it looks like the Missouri micro review is ready to go. I wish I had my drum roll effects.
Well, the origins of our professional development transformation really go back to 2017. And with the new administration that came in 2017, we took a fresh look at how state government was performing. And one of the things we did was a very simple thing. We need to get the facts. And we did a comprehensive statewide survey across all of our 16 cabinet departments, never been done before, that gave us a fact base to understand what's working and what's not in our state government. And what was really important about that, going back to 2017, is that it highlighted, first, although all the departments historically had felt they're all very different. I mean, Department of Conservation and Corrections, I mean, those are pretty different. But what was interesting that came out of the survey was actually they faced similar challenges. And they were more alike than you would ever imagine in terms of how they worked. Not necessarily in their mission, but how they worked. And then the second part that came out loud and clear was acute frustration and challenges tied to professional development. And that there was a huge untapped potential in our state workforce to deliver for our citizens, to be more efficient, more effective, and that, quite frankly, there had been years of systematic neglect. Many departments basically didn't invest at all in training and professional development of their workforce. So those are two themes that came out in 2017 was, number one, we're more alike and we have some common challenges. And then at the top of that list was, we need to really invest in our workforce, get this right, because otherwise we're never going to be efficient, we're never going to be effective, and we're never going to deliver for our citizens the way we need to.
A lack of people being able to manage effectively. And sometimes it was because of skill, and sometimes it was because of will. And I think we recognize that we really, have to, in order to change government, we really need to either give people the skills they need or change the people. And, part of talking about this, when you look at historically at the picture of state government, and I've been around quite a while because I was formerly in the legislature and a statewide office holder. So I've watched government over the years. And you recognize that the state workforce really had been neglected as far as the human resources aspect of providing support to people to understand how to manage people better and how to effectively coach them and how to professionally develop them. That was lacking.
I would say it's a very unique and delicate balance between relentless project management and relationship building and buy-in from the same people that you are asking to keep up with relentless project management. And so the way that we have done that here is at a variety of different levels. We talked earlier about the role of the cabinet and the deputies, and I have a standing agenda. I am a standing agenda item on their monthly agenda. We work with them closely. We provide updates. But for me, I meet and work with our HR directors from across the state every week, constant communication, and we have built a community, I believe, of those HR directors that never existed before we tried to do this transformation. And we work very well together. We ask a lot of each other. We have incredible open dialogue during these meetings. They know that they can ask me any questions if they are confused. They know that I will get back to them as quickly as I can about any of the details. And I recognize that their role is 10 times harder than mine. I get to kind of think of the ideas and lead the conversation and manage the moving pieces. They're actually on the ground implementing. Everything from our largest department that has over 10,000 team members working for them, and how do you have a large-scale transformation of professional development with 10,000 people? One department, we're trying to do it 50,000 people, the entire state. And so the challenges that that department is facing and interacting with is very different from our smallest department, which has 300 people. And so trying to create a professional development transformation that is consistent enough that my team can manage and implement so that they can just work on the details of their nuanced departments, but also something that is unique enough or gives them enough flexibility to do what they need to do at their department level.
We went and visited with legislators to explain the situation. One thing that we started from the beginning was recognizing that this was not an adversarial relationship between the bureaucrats and the legislature. And instead saying, hey, we're partners. You know, here's our problems. We need to solve them. We need to have more effective government. But the people are our most precious resource. And so if we don't invest in them, we'll never have the kind of government that you guys talk about, you know, when you're on the campaign trail. Having been there and said the same things that they've said, I understood where that was coming from, but really to have effective government, you have to have effective people.
This goes to the design across 16 departments. When you spread the load of the costs across 16 departments, it's much more efficient, economies of scale. And also, this goes to the point that a lot of what we did was homegrown, home designed, homegrown, and home delivered. So we weren't paying a lot for extra consultants or anything else like that to implement our programs. We did have help from Deloitte to design Engage 2.0 and work in partnership with us. But our Missouri Leadership Academy, entirely homegrown, designed, delivered. Missouri Way, basically designed here with a little bit of external help, but for the most part, delivered by state staff. So the costs of those programs, I mean, imagine a professional development program for 3 full days, including all course materials, including meals, for $200 per person. That is unbelievably, these are like orders of magnitude less expensive than if you went to the open market to do it. So this is one of the reasons why we had efficient, effective design of our programs that gave us the economies of scale and made them so that you could make the case for them relatively easily that this is worth doing. They weren't high-priced items.
Hopefully, you are hearing a little bit of the why we're asking you to provide feedback, why your supervisor is doing a short evaluation of you on a quarterly basis, why we want you to get better and the big picture. We do a lot of work around communications, cascading the communications that we do with the cabinet, then with the deputies, then with the HR team, and giving them specific types of communication, whether it be visually, pictures, videos, email communications that they can use, filtering it down as close as we can get to the frontline person filling the potholes. But I won't say that we figured it all out, 50,000 people. I know that some departments trickle it down very well. Other departments have to massage the message for their nuance. We have been having feedback sessions, focus groups at all levels to try to see if that message is getting down through the entire organization. I think we definitely have a long way to go there just based on some of the questions that we receive. I will say that when we rolled Engage 2.0 out, we had a cadre of 550 change champions. And the intent of that was that we would have informal influencers at all levels. So not the deputies, not the division directors, real on the ground folks. And we trained them to answer questions, and more importantly, we trained them where to find resources so that if they had a question, somebody came up to their cubicle and asked something that they had never heard of, they would know where to go for the answers. And if they didn't, we at Rollout had every week change champion huddles. It's now every other week, but they would have an opportunity, open phone line to ask us, and they all have our email addresses, our phones, and my team and I answer many of the same questions over and over, but that's okay with this because we want people to know that they can come to us with questions.
Governor Parson has been incredibly supportive of every single aspect of the talent management development, and that has helped tremendously. I mean, he comes over, we did a lot of our own homegrown videos, and he would always participate in those and give a little introduction, and that helps set the stage for people listening. Hey, this is important to the administration. He does really value what we do, and that was one of the important things that we were trying to get across to people is we want to hear from you, we want you to have input, we want to support you, you have something to give the state government to make it work better, and he helped deliver that message.
If you don't have the governor's support for the idea that we are going to be in for the long haul, it's going to take some time, but it pays these big dividends of the ability to change how our government works. If someone's just looking for a press release or a quick win, you're not going to be able to get there. So it's, are you in for the long haul to make real change? That does take time. So that's one. The second is engage the senior leaders from across departments. And for us, the unlock has been to work with the deputies. The deputies tend to be those who are much more into the management. They, quite frankly, also are oftentimes not the more political appointees. They are career, they tend to be. And that's made a significant amount of the difference because by getting them as a community working together, we're in a much better spot, but it's also much more practical because they bring decades of experience, and they're then in the positions to go back home and make it happen.
Well, I'm glad that you asked that. For a lot of reasons. And one of the major reasons is that state government is fairly close to the people. And the people of Missouri like to have, they recognize that their government is pretty close to them and they can go to it to get response. And so we need to be more responsive to the citizens. We need to deliver better results. And I think that helps maintain the credibility of the state government as an institution. Because relative to a lot of the other institutions that we watch, people don't have a lot of faith in some of them. I think they do in state government, and that makes it more important for us to really invest in the people who are actually delivering those services, because that's what it boils down to. So for years, people can talk about smaller, better, more efficient government, but it's talk unless we actually take action and help people get better and continuously improve to make government and our systems deliver better results.
Congratulations, Team Missouri. I wish we could all applause. I'm going to do something that's going to make Scott really nervous. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do is I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself and just hoot and holler into the microphone and clap and give them a round of applause. So everyone unmute and just give a...
I see Casey Osterkamp there. Hi,
Yay,
Casey.
Dawn. Yay, look at, hi, Casey. Congratulations. Awesome job. Thank you, Scott. Anything you want to say about that filming?
Other than, I mean, it was a joy to be there last week. It was only a couple of business days ago we were there. But the emphasis on the deputies just came through and through. And so, you know, there's a CAO call going on right now. That's irrelevant to getting stuff done. Clearly, it's all about the deputies. This is the VIP room, the place to be.
So awesome. Thank you, Team Missouri. We will have the longer version of that up on our website soon. And so now I have pivoted to my awesome awards background, because now we are going to give away an award. So Scott's going to get ready to play an award, and we've been giving these out throughout the conference. 1 or 2 awards during each session. And we are super honored now to give the award out. Ready? Let's hear who the winner is.
Hello and welcome back to NASCA's Virtual Awards. I'm your host, Ace.
And I'm Claire.
And we are here to present the NASCA Innovations in State Government Award. Now, you've seen us already, and we've handed out a couple awards to highly deserving states and organizations. We're here this afternoon to do the same and talk about a really cool project from an awesome state focused in homeless housing. And Claire and I have been reading a little bit about that project and getting excited about the work.
Yeah, so this state has really done an amazing job in, you know, diligently finding these old hotels and vacant buildings and turn them diligently and quickly into homeless facilities. And so it's been amazing to see them do that. And also in this era of COVID and doing things virtually and dealing with that has been really awesome to see.
Absolutely. I mean, taking care of our most vulnerable populations is a big piece of state government. So with that, we are honored, we are thrilled to recognize for their work in the infrastructure and facilities category, the state of California. Congratulations, California, and we will go to them to hear their words about the project and, of course, accept this awesome award. Congratulations.
NASCA colleagues, I'm Dan Kim, Director of the California Department of General Services. And I want to thank NASCA for the State Innovation Award for Infrastructure. Now, you've all heard the saying, don't let a crisis go to waste. Well, we didn't. The COVID-19 pandemic offered a window of opportunity for the state of California to implement Project Home Key, which provides supportive housing for those experiencing homelessness. Now I'd like to turn it over to Jason Kenny, our DGS Deputy Director for the Real Estate Services Division, who will take you through DGS's role with Project Home Key.
On behalf of the Department of General Services, I would like to thank NASCA for this award. You know, in California, since the beginning of the pandemic, the state, in partnership with local governments, have provided non-congregate housing for homeless individuals using hotels to prevent the further spread of COVID-19. In April 2020, the state conceptualized Project HomeKey, an $800 million grant program, leveraging CARES Act funding to purchase vacant hotels to provide both short-term interim housing as well as long-term permanent affordable housing. While the purchase and conversion of hotels to permanent housing is itself not a brand new concept, the scale at which California intended to do it and the December 2020 expenditure deadline for the funding required the state to develop an entirely new toolkit and approach. To develop this toolkit took a multidisciplinary approach. Real Estate Services Division dispatched multiple teams of architects, civil engineers, structural engineers, mechanical engineers, and electrical engineers to these hotels to do the assessment and then collaboratively work together to develop the final product. The purpose of our assessments was to evaluate these hotels for use as permanent supportive housing for formerly transient individuals or families. In the event that the property is deemed attractive, the property would be purchased by the county and rehabilitated with state support and federal funds, including potential tax credits. In just 4 weeks, the Real Estate Services Division identified 6 prototypical hotel properties to be evaluated for proof of concept and cost estimating, developed a rapid assessment process that was aligned to the state building code and typical funding streams for housing projects, completed the 6 site assessments, including scopes of work, cost estimates, and code analysis, and converted the entire process into a simple, repeatable toolkit for the state and local governments to follow in evaluating potential properties for purchase. In addition to the toolkit, the data from the 6 assessed sites has served as part of the basis for the state's award to local governments for purchases. At this point, we're happy to report that over 6,000 hotel units are on track to be purchased by the December deadline.
Congratulations, the state of California. I know we have several people calling in for California today. So what I want to do now, another one of my tricks that Scott's like, what are you doing? Is I want us all to drop in the chat just a congratulations to California. So everyone drop in the chat. Congrats to California. So awesome for joining us today. Congratulations on your award. It has been awesome to see you guys. Awesome to connect with you guys. These small group discussions are some of my favorite. And with that, Scott, do you have any final thoughts before we close it out for the day?
Oh, I'm loving watching you like you're a sports commentator or on the red carpet holding that microphone. No, this has been great. Just thank you to everybody that frankly gives a damn about keeping this community going and sharing your ideas. It means a lot to, I'm sure, everybody in this call.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing about NASCA is these small group discussions when I really get to hear from you guys. And I learned things from Michigan, from California, from Missouri, from Virginia, from all over the country today. It was great to see you guys. Thanks for being here. We hope to see you. We'll be back in the winter starting in December. So emails will be going out about that. So with all that, let's play our outro music. Good to see you guys. Scott's like, no more music, no more playing.
We're just ending the call.
With that, I'll close the call out. Thank you guys. Thank you. Awesome. Everyone, thanks so much. It was truly a pleasure. So great. Congratulations to our award winners.